欢迎各位来到本周的每周华尔街。那么我们都知道，本周是11月最后一周，也是一个交易非常清淡的一周。由于周四是 Thanksgiving holiday，所以整个的市场呢交易非常清淡。周五呢还是半天的交易。那么首先呢，我们前方记者来回顾一下从上周五到本周四的这个行情的一个走势分析。好，谢谢。
今天是纽约时间2014年11月21日星期五，一起来看一周美股回顾。周一能源板块并购引关注，美股涨跌不一，标普创收盘新高。周二医疗保健和小额股领涨，美股收高。周三美联储10月会议纪要没有暗示加息时间表，美股收跌。周四原油价格抬升带动能源类股上涨，美股收高，道指标普创新高。周五三大指数早盘高开，道指迅速窜升160点，午盘时三大指数均有回落，但依旧收高。道琼斯平均工业指数报收17810.06点，上升91.06点。纳斯达克综合指数报收4712.97点，上升11.10点。标普500指数报收2063.50点，上涨10.75点。今天领涨板块为能源、金融、医疗保健、工业和原材料，领跌板块为电信服务。周一美股整体维持涨势，欧洲与中国实行更多的宽松政策的消息提振了市场情绪，令投资者对全球经济增长前景感到乐观。本周四为感恩节假期，美国股市交易可能会受到一个小幅的影响，同时投资者将获得房屋、住宅市场的数据、通货膨胀以及 GDP 等数据。今日收盘，美股涨跌互现，电信板块的不佳表现使得道指承压。一起来看一下截至收盘三大股指的具体点位状况。道琼斯工业指数今日收在17817.51点，单日涨幅为7.45点。标普500指数今日收在2069.43点，单日涨幅为5.93点。纳斯达克综合指数今日收在4754.89点，单日涨幅为41.92点。周二美股涨跌互现，欧佩克会议将至。会议前夕呢，俄罗斯、墨西哥、沙特阿拉伯和委内瑞拉4国会谈未达成减产协议。受此消息影响 ，WTI 油价和布油即时开始下跌。能源板块走弱，道指承压，标普500指数在历史最高点附近盘整，但是在接近收盘小幅回落。消费者信心指数在周二意外下滑，但美国第三季度 GDP 增幅远超预期，拉升了三大股指，道指和纳指在截至收盘时回升。下面一起来看一下截至收盘三大股指的具体点位状况。道琼斯工业指数今日收在17820.50点，单日涨幅为2.47点。标普500指数今日收在2067.35点，单日跌幅为2.08点。纳斯达克综合指数今日收在4758.25点，单日涨幅为3.36点。
周三美股开盘基本持平，随后三大股指涨跌互现，能源股的回落抵消了防御型股和高收益动能股的涨势，大盘继续陷于狭窄区间内震荡，道指收低。今天也是美国感恩节假期来临之前的最后一个完整的股市交易日。周四美股因感恩节的到来将停盘一天，周五也会提前休市。截至收盘，交易量上，纽交所周四交易量换手为3.66亿，纳斯达克周四交易量换手为11.23亿。下面我们来看一下三大股指的具体收盘点位。道琼斯工业平均指数今天涨幅12.81点，报收17827.75点，涨幅0.07%。标普500指数今天上涨5.80点，报收2072.83点，涨幅0.28%。纳斯达克综合指数今天上涨25.07点，报收4787.32点，涨幅0.61%。
欢迎大家回来。那么首先呢，我们来看一下图一，本周涨幅最大的应该是纳斯达克，在 Biotech 和晶片股板块的一个带动下呢，同时罗素2000表现的也非常不错，所以我们可以看到纳斯达克本周的涨幅超过了1.4%。那么很多个股像这个苹果、Intel 等这个个股呢，以及生化股呢，都涨得非常不错整个纳斯达克已经创出了近14年半以来的一个新高。但是这个图形呢，我要提醒大家，正如今天的题目一样，叫谨慎看待12月的行情，因为这个图形的话，短期已经来到一个重要的压力点。当然，我不是一直在给这个股市吹冷风哈，我们也可以看到很多中小盘的股票的话，涨幅非常有限，而市场上追逐的主要是一些大股。那么这些大股它的这种走势哈，以及我们整个全球的经济的一个不是很match， 也就是说美国单边很强，而且本周我们可以看到在周三的时候有一些数据 不是那么好，比如说二手房的数据啊、芝加哥 PMI 数据啊、消费者信心指数啊，这些都不是很好，但是 GDP 数据是非常的不错所以好坏参半。那么我觉得这个12月呢，我们应该谨慎看待。谨慎看待并不是说要大家去看空，而是要注意。那么第二张图呢是 S&P 500这个走势那么也是和纳斯达克差不多，也来到一个楔形的一个压力，也是历史的新高点。那么最后一张图呢，我想跟大家分享的就是 VXX。那么首先呢，我们来看一段这个Pimco 的前 CEO Mohammed 在佛罗里达有一个这个全球金融领袖峰会的一个采访，接受雅虎的采访，讲到了这个 VXX， 我个人觉得非常值得大家参考。也就是说，由于各个央行的利息的不同，使得美金的出现一个急速的上涨。那么这个偏离呢，这个当中的波动呢，会可能逐渐影响到股市当中那么我们来看这个片段，然后来看这个VXX 的走势。好，谢谢。
We're here at the Global Financial Leadership Conference in Naples, Florida, catching up with Mohamed El-Arian of Allianz. Mohamed, thank you for stopping by. We had this little interruption in this low volatility market slumber we've had for a while in October. It was very fleeting, but it was pretty sharp. The velocity of these moves in equity, commodity, currency markets was pretty dramatic, actually, for the really relatively gentle news flow. It really wasn't that big a scare. It seems to tell me something about, high asset prices and low nominal growth and how sensitive we are to any changes in this picture. Is this just the setup that we have for a while, do you think?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, the interruption occurred because the two premises that the market has been relying on were shaken. Mm-hmm. First is what I call the low equilibrium world, that yes, we're not growing really well, but we're doing enough, sort of Goldilocks light. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, we got news that Germany, that industrial production had contracted by 4%. Yeah. So that really shook us. The second thing that we are relying on is that central banks will always be there for us. Mm-hmm. And there was that moment that week where the ECB seemed hesitant to do more.
Yes.
You bring these two things together, you start having volatility, and then people start realizing that they've mispriced liquidity risk. Mm-hmm. And then you get the massive sell-off. And what's that telling you is that we are relying enormously on these two things, and if they are shaken for some reason, then it's going to be pretty bumpy.
And the dramatic rebound we've seen, you think, is mostly because those fears about the central bank policymakers maybe stepping back were allayed at this point?
Correct. I mean, let's remember that on the Wednesday we had the 7 Sigma event in the fixed income market when we saw U.S. Treasury yields plummet. Yeah. And very few of us will forget this anytime soon. The very next day, a Fed president comes out suggesting that, maybe we won't exit QE3.
Yeah.
And the fact that there was a reaction from officialdom reinforces this notion that central banks are markets' best friends, and they will come and do whatever it takes to limit volatility.
Yeah. Now, that being the case, you've suggested at this conference and elsewhere that we may be approaching that point where central bank policy can really not do that much more, certainly for the real economy, and maybe the costs might start to outweigh the benefits. Are we there yet? How do we know?
So we never know, right? I sense we're getting closer to it. And there's something else going on, which is that central banks are now starting to head in different directions. Mm-hmm. So it was an easy call when everybody was doing the same thing.
Right.
Now the Fed is easing its foot off the accelerator, while the Bank of Japan and the ECB are going the other way. And that's going to complicate things compared to what we've been used to.
And one of the results of that, you've written on this, is the U.S. dollar rally, which in itself is, the markets have kind of absorbed that relatively well to this point. But does that mean it kind of knocks something loose in the system there?
So the history of this, Mike, is that when we have very sharp movements in the currency, something breaks. Mm-hmm. In the old days, it used to be the developing world. Right, because they didn't have the flexibility to adjust. I don't think that's the risk today. Mm-hmm. My major concern is that the volatility of the FX market slowly gets translated to the equity market. Why? Because most equity investors do not hedge their currency risk. Right? So you can have this transmission mechanism, and if that happens, and if volatility comes back, then that's going to question the ability of central banks to repress it.
Mm-hmm. And just finally, Janet Yellen and Ben Bernanke before her has said that they can't focus specifically on global financial market effects of their own policies if they think it's the right thing to do to start lifting rates next year. But pragmatically speaking, Is this going to change the timetable for when the Fed might be able to lift interest rates?
So I don't think directly. I think they believe, and I understand why they do so, which is if they promote economic growth in the U.S., so the U.S. is the largest economy and it's the most connected in terms of the influence it has. We supply the global public goods.
Yeah.
So I understand where that comes from, but I do not think you can ignore the impact on the rest of the world. You have to at least listen to what other countries are feeling, because we live in one big neighborhood. So if part of the neighborhood gets disrupted, there's a risk that it feeds back onto you. And that's what the sell-off of last January, February was. It came from the emerging world and then impacted us. So we've got to be careful. We live in a much more interconnected world than we'd like to believe.
好的，欢迎大家回来。我们看了这个 VXX 的分析以后呢，我们再来看最后一张图，就是 VXX， 这是我非常喜欢的一张图。那么这张图呢，显示这个 VXX 来到最近10月份的一个低点，同时 RSI 出现了一个背离。那么我个人觉得呢，现在可能也许是关注甚至买进 VXX 的时候。那我们拭目以待。那我们来回顾我们这个商业客户 ITKG 的一个介绍，以及我和他的 CEO 的一个采访。好，谢谢。
Integral Technologies 股票代码 ITKG 通过旗下全资子公司 Electric Plus Corporation 制造、生产和授权轻型塑胶导电新型材料。世界上第一台电动车电池组就采用该材料。由于这种产品的重量比金属轻40%到60%，而且更容易被塑形，其蕴藏着广袤的商机。ITKG 已经完成了研发阶段，商业化运作正在全面铺开。目前已同多家大型企业开展合作，如美国汽车零部件生产商 Delphi Automotive、德国化学品集团巴斯夫以及韩国韩华化学公司等。值得注意的是，掀起全球电动车热潮的 Tesla 也被认为可能将与 ITKG 合作，而 ITKG 曾聘用在电动车领域具有极高声望的技术人员。显然，与 Tesla 的合作可能并不只是捕风捉影。ITKG 发行盘 1.004 亿股，流通盘8727万股。
Hi, welcome, Doug. Doug is CEO of ITKG. Recently, the stock doubled from 35 cents to all the way to, I think, close to 90 cents. It's possible, Doug, you can give us a little brief introduction about ITKG past, present, and the future.
Okay, sure, Warren. Thank you. ITKG was founded in 1996.
Sure.
So it has been around for a while.
Okay.
The original technology it was founded on was based on an antenna technology.
Okay.
And how Electroplast, which is our primary product, which is a conductive plastic,
Sure.
Electroplast was discovered as a way to better for uses in antenna.
Okay.
So what the company decided was that conductive plastic was a far bigger opportunity than antennas were at the time.
Sure.
So all of the resources and all of the focus of the company was to be 100% focused on conductive plastic.
Sure.
So since roughly 2003, the company has been a conductive plastics company.
Okay.
And just briefly to give you an idea of what conductive plastics is, we take a small amount of metal, and in most cases it's carbon fiber.
Okay.
And we take a large portion of plastic, combine those two, and that's a patented method that we use to do that.
Okay.
We currently have 53 patents,
Okay.
some of which those patents are based on the actual how the material is made.
Sure.
Some of it's for applications that it goes into.
Okay.
But the end result of the material is it has the physical properties of plastic.
Okay.
It can be molded, it can be extruded, shaped into essentially anything you want, but it also maintains electrical properties. So
Okay.
it can be used in numerous electrical applications.
Okay.
That was roughly 2003 when the company began filing the patents. And more recently, what's happened with the company is there was a management change that took place 2 years ago.
Sure.
Up until that time, it was actually almost 2 years ago, in the middle of November of 2012 is when the management change had taken place, Warren. That's when I became the CEO.
Sure.
And that's also when the board had changed
Okay.
as well. But the purpose for that was to really take the company from an R&D company and move it more to a commercialized company.
Sure.
And since that time, what's happened is we've had a lot of success the last 2 years. We've signed agreements with Hanwha in South Korea.
Sure.
They have the manufacturing rights to Korea.
Okay.
We've also signed a development agreement with Delphi Automotive. And as you know, Delphi Automotive is one of the largest auto parts suppliers in the world.
Sure.
We also have signed a memorandum of understanding with BASF.
Okay.
And BASF is one of our key strategic partners.
Okay.
And we're in continuing talks with them, and we anticipate a little more serious relationship with them in the very near future.
Okay.
And the other thing that has happened as well, we do have a part that is commercialized and is on a vehicle. And that's on the Fisker Karma, which is an all-electric vehicle.
Sure.
So we do have one commercialized part.
Okay, that's great. And as we know, recently you report quarter earnings, and that's the only quarter you have revenues. Can you give us what's the update? Do you think next couple of 4 quarters revenue increase gradually, and then when you hit a big order, the revenue will, hit the roof? Is it a possibility?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. One of the other changes I didn't bring up to you.
Sure.
We did bring on a new CFO earlier this year.
Okay.
And as part of that was really to bring our balance sheet more in line with where we felt that it should be.
Sure.
So this year, we have reduced our debt by over 75%. We're essentially debt-free. We have very little debt.
Sure.
And the other reason we brought on a new CFO is because we are starting to commercialize and we're beginning to realize revenues. This is the first quarter that we've realized revenue, and we anticipate to record revenues from here on out.
Okay.
And really, we certainly anticipate those revenues to continue to grow as well.
Sure.
But for us, it's a pretty big event because the company has been around for over 15 years.
Sure.
And we've never recorded revenue, so this is a first for us.
Okay, that's great. And also, on your recent news regarding your kind of relationship with the Korean company Hanwee, right?
Yes.
And what do you see in this field, especially in the Asia area? You think you can expand to what kind of industry and which parts of Asia, including China?
Absolutely. We are in multiple industries.
Okay.
Transportation, potentially into aerospace. There are applications across all those areas, but our strength really is in transportation, particularly automotive.
Okay.
And I'll really answer that question based around that. Our engineering team comes from the automotive industry, and their skill set is very much in the application and design of solutions for automotive. And as you well know, electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles is a huge growing industry.
Sure.
The projected number of electric and electrical assisted vehicles is 20 million by the year 2020. That's a huge increase. Over half of those will be coming from the U.S. and China.
Okay.
So I bring that up because Hanwha is a very important relationship for us because we really need to have that Asian presence, particularly an Asian manufacturing presence.
Okay.
So we have that, and we really see them as a stepping stone, if you will, to really grow from that the whole Asian market.
Okay. Recently, ITKG hit 52 weeks high, and the valuation about 60. Am I correct? $60 million market cap.
That's correct.
Okay. Is that the fair value on your perspective? And what do you think the company real value? You think a company can move to the NASDAQ or Amex? What's your plan?
Sure. Good question. It's difficult for me to comment on my own market cap.
Sure.
Because I always think the company should be worth more than what it is because I'm the CEO.
Okay.
But the applications we're working on, Warren, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Okay.
We also signed an agreement with East Penn.
Okay.
East Penn's they're the world's largest battery company for lead-acid batteries.
Okay.
That application alone could potentially be worth hundreds of millions of dollars for us. The wiring we're working on with Delphi, again, multi-billion-dollar industry.
Okay.
What we believe the market for this is, in the next 5 years is somewhere in the $30 to $35 billion industry. I'm not saying we'll capture all that, but we're the leaders in that industry. So that's certainly something I feel like we can support a $60 million market cap.
Sure.
And one thing I want to add to that, our stock has doubled over the last 2 to 3 months. And one other thing we had done as part of cleaning our financials where we retired all convertible debt. And as you know, convertible debt can have a real dramatic negative impact on your stock. And as part of our cleanup of the financials, we cleaned our financials up as we also cleared up a lot of the bad selling that had taken place within the stock as well.
Okay. That's very good. Thank you so much for Doc time, and hopefully nice to see you in the near-term future. Thank you.
Thank you.